Paragold is the destination for luxury home. We've brought the world's best design brands together in one place. From traditional to modern, indoors to out, our curated selection of furnishings and home improvements transforms every space. Get inspired with our go-to edits, featuring expert styling tips and exclusive designer shops, where trusted tastemakers pick products they love. With fast, free, full-service delivery on most items, we make it easy to bring your vision to life. Ready for extraordinary? Shop now on Paragold.com.
This is Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Everybody, happy Thursdays. We welcome you into Money Moves on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network, live as always in downtown Las Vegas, Circa Resort and Casino. Stormy Buonantony, Jonathan Von Tobel with you for the next 2 hours. And did you have caffeine gum this morning or what? Because, in the mouth still. Yeah. You know you have to speak on television radio right now.
I like to pack it up, you know what I mean?
You going to swallow it?
Every once in a while, I'll fire a Zyn up there and do the whole show. You know,
what? No, you do not. Are you a gum swallower?
No, not often. I mean, I have, and I did yesterday. But I only do it in times of danger or I don't have anywhere. I was in one of our wonderful municipals, a park yesterday, and there was nowhere for me to put my gum. I didn't want to spit it on the ground because the other day I stepped on gum, and I was filled with such fury about stepping on said gum that I would not do that to somebody else, so I swallowed it.
Stepping on gum is rage-inducing, but not healthy. Like, I wouldn't do, granted, we'd probably do a lot of things that are less healthy than that, but neither here nor there. That said, we got a fun show on tap today, so let's set the table like we always do. Time to run it down.
It's time for the top headlines and topics of the day. This is The Rundown.
All right, coming up in about 15 minutes, we will have our first guest of the day, Morgan Uber, ESPN college football sideline reporter, get her thoughts on the two teams she just covered this past weekend, USF and Florida. She was out there in the swamp this week. She's got Texas. Then in hour two, Jeff Erickson of RotoWire, senior editor over there, going to help us break down not only some prop options for Thursday Night Football tonight, but the weekend as a whole on the NFL.
Yeah, no offense to Jeff, but more interested in Morgan today, only because we have this controversy about Arch Manning and his shoulder, whether or not he's hurt. Steve Sarkisian the other day made did he allege that, we make faces while we're on the toilet or whatever it was. It's all getting kind of weird. So I do want to see if there's any more insight on what's going on because, the grainy footage shows that he looks like he's in pain when he's throwing the football. So I do wonder if there's any more information on that.
I mean, Sark, if that's the face you make, thanks for sharing. I don't know. That was too much information.
Gotta get that checked out, more fiber. Push so hard.
We do have Thursday Night Football on deck, though, which is one of a handful of interesting lines as the circa million contest lines are out. They were revealed about 30 minutes ago. We will break down some potential options for the card this week and more. And some of these numbers are interesting. You pointed out this morning, Broncos-Colts at a pick 'em.
Yeah, and at circa. So, when you get these contest lines, the books will, I think, generally when you talk to guys who set these numbers, when we're talking about the contests, you'll look at where your money is, where it's expected to go. So I'm very curious. It's not like one or pick or one the other way really matters for a game like that. But I'd be curious to see what they eventually give us for a contest line there. A contest line for Philly and Kansas City. Is that floating around as pick as well? So there's a lot of different numbers here. And games like San Francisco, New Orleans, that's a 3 shaded to the favorite side. Is that going to be a full 3? Is it going to be 3.5? So very interested for a lot of these different games where they're going to dictate the contest line for this week.
That number in the contest for that 49ers game, as you mentioned, is sitting at the 3. Why? Because of a pretty significant injury out there in San Francisco. So in case you missed it, 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan told reporters yesterday afternoon that Brock Purdy was a, quote, long shot to play on Sunday against the Saints, that it could be as well a multi-week injury. Ian Rappaport then this morning followed up the report saying he'll miss anywhere from 2 to 5 weeks with what's a variant of turf toe. And there's a weird exchange with Shanahan yesterday on the podium. I watched that whole press conference, and a guy asked him, so is it turf toe? He's like, if you want to call it turf toe, we'll call it turf toe. And went into this whole back and forth with the guy about it. But obviously significant. This was a number that was as high as 6.5, came down to 4.5 when we were on the air yesterday. And then with this news sitting at that flat 3, the total also from 42.5 down to 40.5.
So we have the injury to Kittle, but he was injured in the game against Seattle. I don't know if his absence was entirely factored into the initial 6.5 that we saw, but I figured it's got to be part of the initial number that we saw. The reason why I bring that point up is, are we just asking the basic question, is the difference between Mac Jones and Brock Purdy really 3.5 points? Is it that big of a gap between those two? Or do we believe that Shanahan with this system, what he can do as a play caller. What we've seen him do. You're a 49ers fan. I mean, we can go back through many different guys that have started for this team, the C.J. Beathard's of the world that have gone in there and performed adequately in this system since he's been there, and say, he's done a pretty good job with a lot of these guys. And thus, if it's not worth that much of a difference between the two, should we be looking more seriously at San Francisco as a side this weekend?
Well, I think then you pour into the fact that what we think about the Saints as well,
Correct.
into that handicap, is them potentially being the worst, if not one of the worst, at least, teams in the National Football League this year. I don't know how significant the drop is, but to your point about a C.J. Beathard, for example, stepping in and performing adequately, the win percentage is stark when you have Brock Purdy, Jimmy Garoppolo, or anyone else that has been a starting quarterback for San Francisco. It's like those two guys win games, everybody else largely doesn't, and that is something that at least factored into my mind. But I think it would be San Francisco or nothing for me, honestly, in this spot with Mac Jones.
Because you look at the injury report for the Saints, Tailisi Fuaga is a DNP on Wednesday. We'll see what happens today, on Thursday. Obviously, Trevor Penning's been dealing with that injury. I specify those two because those are two members of your offensive line. And so if you're going to come in short against a defensive front that I think was very impressive, going back and watching that performance against Seattle in detail, that was a really good defensive effort, and all the metrics would point to that. Seattle was supposed to be a strong running attack. They definitely held it down. There was nothing that they were getting in terms of, or excuse me, they were getting what they wanted in terms of a pass rush, getting after Darnold as well in a limited sample size. So I kind of trust that San Francisco defensively is going to come in here and be very, very good, and especially against an offense that might be missing two starters. And then you get into the other point, which is maybe the difference by our measure is not as big. From a contest perspective, going back to what we're going to talk about today with what the line's going to be, it's going to be interesting to see because I think that might be an option for a lot of people in the millions.
Also, with all of these injuries, so you mentioned George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk also won't return until at least week 5. DeMarcus Robinson suspended until week 4. Juwan Jennings did have the MRI come back clean, could play Sunday there, but potentially if you're targeting props, obviously Christian McCaffrey got a ton of run the other day, Ricky Pearsall, maybe those are the guys that you look to there. With him missing Purdy, that is 2 to 5 weeks, the game's upcoming. Obviously this weekend in New Orleans, but then they're a 2.5-point favorite against the Arizona Cardinals at home. Then they have Jacksonville, the Los Angeles Rams, and Tampa Bay Bucks on that route. So if we expect Purdy to miss at least the next 2 weeks, potentially more, I mean, there's 3 division games that are in that mix. How much of a concern is that for you in the division? Because we're seeing those numbers on the move. At DraftKings and BetMGM, San Francisco is still a slight favorite in the NFC West, plus 160, plus 140 respectively to the Rams plus 170. But FanDuel, ESPN Bet, some others now have flipped. I'm looking at the Rams plus 160, 49ers plus 185, Arizona 3-1.
I guess the thing would go, first off, again, going back to the original point, what do you think this real drop-off is? The second point would be 2 of the next 3 games are at home, so that's good because you're going to have to play New Orleans and then you're home against Arizona and Jacksonville. I know I'm somebody who has said a million times, home field worth about 1.5 points. Median result for home teams in this week 1 was 0. So again, it's not really that strong, but it's at least something that works in your favor. So I don't know. I don't think I'll put it this way. If this defense is as good as it looked on Monday or on Sunday, and they're back to the level of being the defense that was taking them to Super Bowls in 2 out of the 4 years and getting to NFC Championship games, I think you're in a pretty good position to tread water, if not come out of it on top, depending on what you think of opponents like Arizona, Jacksonville. I think we have to do this with L.A. just given the status of Matthew Stafford's back. But if L.A. is fully healthy by the time you play them October 2nd, if he's still sidelined. So I don't think you're too worried about their future prospects. Now, somebody like me who's got, and I don't know if you did too, but the NFC number 1 seed, probably done there. It's probably not going to happen. But you're still going to be in contention for this division if you can tread water, which I think they can, at least defensively.
More quarterback injury updates real quickly as we shift gears to Thursday Night Football coming up tonight. Jaden Daniels was listed on the injury report earlier this week with a right wrist, but according to reports, it was very minor. They didn't find anything when they did all of the scans, and he's been taken off the injury report for today, where we're seeing that Thursday Night Football game, Commanders-Packers sitting 3 with Green Bay favored at home. And this seems like a little bit of a pros versus Joes game if you look at the bet splits, at least right now here at circa 62% of the bets are backing Green Bay, but just 21% of the handle. So Washington taking money. We've seen that 3.5 come down to 3 at a lot of spots out there in the market. There are still 3.5s available. Keep that in mind. Total slight movement toward the over here as well. On what's already been a high total. We're sitting 48, 49, depending on where you look.
Yeah, and I would expect that this is going to be A number we see move here in the next couple of minutes, just from about an hour ago or so. Packers, quote, don't sound overly optimistic about their two injured offensive linemen, Aaron Banks and Zach Tom. So you're going to get two backups here. They didn't practice at all this week, so I didn't think that was going to be the case anyway. So that, to me, it's a big one. If you go back to the game against Detroit, Jordan Love wasn't really pressured, especially in the early portion of the game. He was just sitting back and picking apart Detroit. But now with two starters gone along the offensive line, with two backups at left guard and right tackle, against a front that can get after you, that is going to be pretty impactful here for the Green Bay Packers in trying to win this game, trying to cover a key number. I think, to me, if you could have gotten 3.5, it's obviously the go Washington. But either way, to me, it's going to be Washington or pass. The two offensive linemen not being out there, I think, is a really big deal. And we always talk about it from the stance of pass pro. What about run blocking? Like those are the best offensive linemen for a reason. If you're not able to get the same push that you are usually, which they didn't even run the ball that effectively against Detroit, now all of a sudden you're looking at something completely different for Green Bay.
With that thought process, then, do you think that we end up closing at the 3 just about everywhere, that hook goes away?
I would expect so. I mean, or just like 3 juice to 3.5 juice, right? That's pretty much where we're at right now. DraftKings is 3.5, but juice to the dog side. Circus 3, minus 120 to the favorite side. That's probably where you're going to go. You know, you could shop around and find, there's like South Point out here, for example. This is obviously very limited because it's Las Vegas. They don't alter their juice. They're at minus 110 always. So if you can find a shop like that, then you can maybe get out and not have to pay that price. But I think it's going to be some form of these 3.5 threes or some altered juice.
And this total I mentioned, too, pretty high. And
Yep.
For all of the unders that we saw come through this week, those primetime games were relatively high scoring. Although last Thursday night did jack some people up with the way that the first half was so high scoring and then still falls under.
It was an over in spirit.
Crazy.
Not in
I
result.
still can't get over that.
Over in spirit. But I will say, like, I lean a little under. That's not anything I felt too strongly about. Like you said, we're up to 49 at a couple of spots, including where we're sitting right now. But these injuries for the offensive line have to be impactful to the extent where you would think it limits Jordan Love's ability to help this team score.
Yep, officially listed as questionable, but if they're missing one or both, we'll see what it looks like. Okay, we're just getting started here on Money Moves. When we come back, the South Florida Bulls have opened the season with back-to-back outright wins over nationally ranked opponents. Emotional walk-off field goal win in the Swamp last week. ESPN's Morgan Uber joins us next. She was on the sideline for that game. We'll discuss both of those teams and their approach this week, as well as Arch Manning and Texas. Stick around. More Money Moves after this.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
In the Sports Betting Network, Sirius XM Channel 158, alongside Jonathan Von Tobel. Stormy Buonantony with you. Week 3 of the college football season is upon us. And with that, excited to look at a handful of games coming up this weekend with ESPN reporter Morgan Uber, who joins us here on the Progressive Guest Line at Morgan_Uber on X. Will be on the call for Texas UTEP coming up Saturday, 4:15 Eastern on SEC Network. Morgan, before we get to your game this week, I do want to talk to you about what we saw transpire this past weekend. You were on the sideline in the Swamp watching USF walk it off against Florida, and the Bulls have kind of become this darling with what they've done the first 2 weeks with these upsets over top 25 opponents. It's hard to imagine somebody else with 2 better wins to start this season, but can it continue? What did you learn about South Florida last week?
I mean, you can argue right now they have the best resume in college football and have an opportunity, right, going into Miami to, potentially, you could argue, be the number 1 team in the country if they upset Miami this weekend. But I think this team, right, like going into it last week, the Bulls, this is a betting show, I know, 17.5-point underdog. I had no doubt they would cover. I think what Alex Golesh is doing there, getting his players to really buy into a system before he took over. This was a team that was 1-11, but now he has a quarterback in Byron Brown who looked as poised and composed as could be in one of the most electric environments that I've ever been in college football. Stormy, we've covered games in the Swamp. That fourth quarter, Tom Petty blaring through the speakers, I won't back down. The fans going crazy. They took it up another notch in that fourth quarter, and it was, just really impressive to see the way he commanded the offense, and even more impressive too by that South Florida defense and the way they were able to just totally disrupt DJ Lagway the entire game. You could tell, they were frustrated and definitely, a team that has a lot of experience and was very, high on a lot of people's radars in the SEC. Lagway even mentioned, amongst, Heisman being thrown around. But at this point, Byron Brown, no doubt, was the better quarterback in that matchup.
Were you surprised the way that Billy Napier decided to handle some in-game situations, punting on some of these 4th and shorts, kicking? Was that part of the conversation? What did you make of what he was doing as a decision maker?
I was waiting, for one of the teams to break out and be a little bit more aggressive. Really, that whole first half, just continuously trading field goals. The Florida running game early, was having great success. And then you just kind of saw the South Florida defense with Todd Orlando, as the defensive coordinator, had a really good game plan and was able to shut down Jaden Ball as the game continued to go on. So with points at a premium, I think, he was going for the field goals and giving his offense, some credit going into halftime that they were going to be able to adjust, figure it out, become more explosive and make those adjustments in the third quarter. And you saw that in the one touchdown they scored. But, I think it definitely in the final 2 minutes, right? Like the biggest thing when I was watching that final drive when South Florida had the ball, I was sitting there questioning with a minute left, why wouldn't almost Florida's defense let South Florida just score here to give DJ Lagway and the offense an opportunity to get the ball back? So, of course, we could be Monday morning quarterbacks and sit here questioning, Napier's decision. But at the same time, I think he had faith in his veteran defense. I mean, it's one of the best front sevens in the country. So the fact that South Florida's tempo just completely was able to, catch them off guard, I think, and as that game continued to go on and continued to wear them down, and really that was, the biggest story of the game.
Yeah, I know it's a cliche question, but it was one of those things watching the end of the game where it's like, how much did USF win it versus Florida losing it with some of the penalties and the clock management questions, all of that. But as we push it forward to this week, Morgan Uber, ESPN college football sideline reporter, joining us here against Miami. They are a 17.5-point underdog yet again here, but I said earlier this week, I feel like the best thing that ever could have happened to Miami was South Florida winning that game because they're not going to sneak up on anybody. Mario Cristobal is going to be ready. What do you make of such a big spread with the Bulls this week?
I mean, it comes down to the same question that I had, last week. It's going to be those battle in the trenches. You look on paper and Miami has every single size advantage. But, I think, and I gave this report coming out of the half, with Alex Golish, the want to that I saw in those players, it was different with South Florida. You could just tell the way that he fired up his guys. And I asked him the question post game, what will you take from this as you get, the biggest win in program history, under his regime, and how can you carry this forward? And the first thing he said to me was, being able to handle success. There's going to be a lot of press clippings. Our guys are going to get a lot of awards and accolades, and there's going to be a whole lot of noise. But how do we handle success? But I think the way that he's built this culture, it's so process oriented. He's so focused on, one day at a time. He straight up told our crew, like, look, we don't have goals. Like, I don't believe in a system of having goals. Like, I've never heard a coach really say that. You always hear being process driven over goal driven. But for him to straight up say, like, yeah, it's, if we continue to do our job day after day, put our best foot forward every single practice, those goals and what we want at the end of the season, all those things are going to come. So, the line of scrimmage, they're going to have their hands full, with Ruben Bain. Again, I think very similar to what they had, the challenges last week. And now Miami has the tape and was able to see what they did against Florida. So I think, I think it's going to be another really close game and a good fight.
All right, let's move to the game that you have this week, right? Texas. What's the latest on Arch Manning? We have this conspiracy theory that he's injured. Have we talked to Steve Sarkisian again? What have you heard?
So we don't have our meetings with Sark and the coaching staff until Friday in person. Okay. But, just from the different conversations I've had throughout the week with different reporters, different things I've read, right? This has been deemed as Winsgate. It is, Arch spoke on it. He said, look, I've got to make the throw. He was completely wide open. And, I think, Stormy, this, as sideline reporters, we're trained to never speculate. Oh,
no.
Oh, at least we got Jeff, though.
we will have. That was funny. We got a.
Do you think Steve Sarkisian was like, cut it? He just came in, made sure, nope, we don't talk about this.
We don't talk about injuries over here. So it is interesting, and we can follow up that conversation. Hopefully we can reconnect with Morgan here for the last couple of minutes. But Arch it was another slow start, right? 3 for 6, I think, 11 yards the first 2 drives to open that game this past week. But then he has that stretch of the 3 touchdowns on 3 straight attempts, 4 touchdowns in less than 5 minutes. So it's like, which version of him is he really? I think it's probably somewhere in between. Yeah,
and I think she put it well with the whole Winskate terminology. Yeah. When it's one play that we zoom in on and see who knows exactly what he felt, what was going on. It is a little odd when you pair it with some of the weird throws we saw going back to the Ohio State game, where you're short-arming things, you're throwing sidearm when generally we haven't seen that from you. But it does seem like it's much ado about nothing. And look, it's just a guy who's getting his first crack at this, trying to get warmed up, and this is going to be the opponent to do it against. You had a little bit of a reprieve also against San Jose State, and now here you get another one to kind of get geared up before you get into the brunt of your conference schedule, which is going to be brutal.
Where do you sit on Arch as a whole right now? Because obviously it was like all Heisman talk very early on in the season. The expectations were set so high, and this is an easing in period. After the Ohio State game, where I think it was natural to struggle given what Ohio State is and that defense in a tough environment in the shoe. But now you have a couple of these, I hate to say it, but gimme cupcake opponents, right, that you can kind of retool and figure things out as you get set for the SEC schedule.
I mean, I stand exactly where I have it, which is, like, I think he's going to have some good upside. You've seen it. You saw it a little bit more, like you mentioned, against San Jose State. I think the thing that has been somewhat surprising is his penchant for putting the ball in danger, which I didn't think was really going to be a thing. PFF at this point has him down for 5 turnover-worthy plays. In terms of the 2 games and the 68 dropbacks and 60 pass attempts that he has had so far, that's a turnover-worthy play rate of 7%. That's really, really high through 2 games. That, to me, is the one thing that is very surprising.
Morgan, I hear we have you back. We've only got about 60 seconds left with you, if you don't mind. But please finish your thought on Arch and your expectations for this Texas team.
Yeah, look, I mean, we were talking about, I don't know where y'all lost me, but this has been deemed as Winskate. I think there's nothing to worry about with Arch Manning and any, concern about his shoulder. I truly think it's all mechanical. And I think, we got to give him some credit, right? This is only his 3rd collegiate start. So much expectations on his shoulders, but he's still really young. And look, Sark would never have left him in that game if he was having any sort of pain for as long as he did. He ends up going on to throw, 4 touchdowns and had a, incredible 20-yard rushing touchdown that showed off his athleticism. So, a 31-point win. Sure. He told Katie George after the game, it was sloppy and there's a lot to clean up and a lot to get better, but they have this week against UTEP. They have, another easier game the next week, but then it's SEC play from here on out, and they're going to have to get it figured out. But at least, he has this time to continue building the chemistry with his wide receivers. The run game also needs to have some improvement. So it's not just Arch Manning. I think it's really the youth of this Texas offense really just needs to gain some experience.
Morgan, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it, and have a great call on Saturday.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you having me.
Morgan Newber, everybody. Make sure you catch her, Dave Neal, Fozzie Whitaker, SEC Network, 4:15 Eastern, coming up on Saturday. That spread, by the way, 40.5 in favor of Texas. We'll be right back.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Official horse racing partner of VSiN, First Bet is built for bettors who demand more. First Bet isn't just about placing a bet. It's about helping bettors of all levels with proprietary AI handicapping tools that provide data-driven insights to help you make smarter bets. First Bet's in-app tools give you win, place, and show probabilities for each runner so you can quickly and easily identify good value plays and improve your ROI. Right now, you can take advantage of their limited time $250 sign-up offer. To claim your bonus, though, use the promo code VSIN250. That's VSIN250 when you sign up in the First Bet app or at firstbet.com. That's the number 1, stbet.com. Promo code VSIN250. Alongside Jonathan Von Tobel, Stormy Buonantony with you back here in downtown Las Vegas, Circa Resort and Casino. Continuing all of this college football talk. Appreciate Morgan Uber joining us last segment. Remember, if you ever miss a segment, miss any of the show, you want to catch up, Money Moves available wherever you get your podcasts. And We didn't get to ask her. I'm a little bit disappointed about Florida LSU, conversely, with what she saw from DJ Lagway, talking about how USF defensively really did make him uncomfortable. How much of that do you think was USF versus Lagway? Is he completely healthy? Should we be sold on that? Where do you sit on him going into this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, the jury is obviously out. This is supposed to be a dude that's uber talented, that has everything in front of him, but he was inaccurate. It didn't really look like he had, I thought, a lot of zip on it. Either way, though, you don't want to use a term that you sideline reporters use, I don't want to speculate on anything. He just didn't really play well. And maybe there is a sense of these teams get caught in this from time to time. Maybe there was just a sense that they thought they were going to walk in there and just beat the crap out of that team and get out. And then all of a sudden, when you find yourself in a game where that team is not backing down, is matching your physicality, it's a little bit tougher to run the ball than you thought. You don't really find what you're looking for downfield, and then all of a sudden it's too late and the game's over. Yeah. So I think there's more to Lagway than meets the eye, as we have seen here, not only in this game, but for the season. It was fine in the first game against whoever that they had played. I know it was like some minor school, but now this is like the real, obviously, test for you. Mm-hmm. Last year, when you go back to some of the games in which we saw him, he did show out in some pretty good games, but we haven't really, for as much hype as there is for DJ Lagway, we haven't seen much. The game against LSU last year only completed 50% of his passes. PFF gave him a 57.2 passing grade. He committed 3 turnover-worthy plays in that game, despite not throwing an interception. Outside of the Kentucky game, he never really blew up when you're looking at what he gave you as a starter down the stretch. So maybe we're just wrong. Maybe the general we is just wrong about what he can be as a quarterback. We'll find out against an improved LSU defense.
Absolutely. In Death Valley, no less. This number, though, has come down from 9.5 with the Gators getting the points now to just 7.5. So people are buying the bounce back on Florida, despite what we're talking about with DJ Lagway, despite the offensive line struggling and not being able to create a lot of holes for those running backs. Florida, though, had 11 penalties for over 100 yards in that game. We talked about the final drive and the miscues there and the clock management. So how much do you anticipate, maybe to your point, like they thought that they were just going to run roughshod, a little bit of a look ahead to the game and the opponent that they have, probably prepping a little extra ahead of time for what they were going to have to do against the Tigers. Do you still like them at that 7.5? Because I know you did previous to the line move.
Yeah, I think so. Going through some of the numbers, and I was texting you about this a little bit, where if you look at like the key numbers, the values of these games, falling on 9, falling on 8, it's not really that crazy. Right. When you're talking about the percentage of games since 2005 falling on those numbers for college football. So at 7.5, as long as you're getting that, I think you're still feeling comfortable despite the line move. The other thing I'm going to be curious about as we talk about this, so there's 2 notes we should have here. First off, LSU starting center looks like he's not going to play here, so that's going to be pretty big for Florida with what we still believe to be a pretty strong front 7. The other is, and that's why I wanted to ask our guest here about that, which was the decision-making from Billy Napier. Kicking on 4th and manageables and punting on midfield or in USF territory, despite being the better team, the more talented team, the timidness with which he approached that game. If I showed you just the decision-making in this game, it was like, hey, which team do you think was the underdog? If I had wiped your brain of everything, you'd probably be like, oh, the team that's playing like a bunch of chickens.
Yeah.
When you're talking about they're going for it and whatnot. And that's not the case. So I wonder if Napier is going to change that as well, because that was, people keep talking about Billy Napier getting fired. This is going to sound somewhat controversial, but I think it makes sense. I don't think the biggest offense is losing to USF. It's the way you lost to them and in the way that you manage that game, which I think is very unacceptable.
Total 48.5. Also worth noting, at least the expectation is that the Gators should be getting their stud defensive tackle, Caleb Banks, back. Billy Napier was asked about it, said what a force he is, and they're going to reevaluate things and have a decision by Friday, but he's been practicing this week, whereas he wasn't previously. So I think the hope and the expectation is to get him back out there. We do have a game tonight, Thursday Night Football, college football edition with NC State and Wake Forest, 7:30 Eastern on ESPN, one of the ACC's oldest rivalries dating back to 1895. They've played every year for the last 116. Spread sitting 7. There are still a couple 7.5s out there. I see it at FanDuel, ESPN Bet, DraftKings Circa, where we're at, sitting at the flat 7, total 52.5. Both teams enter tonight 2-0 JVT. Wake Forest dominant against an FCS team in Western Carolina last week, but barely squeaked out a 10-9 win against lowly Kennesaw State in their opener. NC State, meanwhile, a pair of one-score wins to their name, held off ECU's late comeback to beat the Pirates 24-17, and then last week overcame a bad start to Virginia. They win 35-31. had some help as well with Virginia missing a 47-yard field goal, couldn't convert a late fourth down attempt, threw a pick at the end of the game, and the defense looked really bad. So anything stand out to you about this one?
What's that? And whether or not Wake Forest can actually get to them in that regard. You mentioned the defense. For some specifics here, UVA ran for over 250 yards, 8 yards per carry. They had 3 touchdowns on the ground. How about these explosive runs that NC State gave up? 66, 42, and 20 yards. So they were getting gouged by that running game. I think the question just becomes, can Wake Forest do that? I'm not entirely sure if that's going to be the case. You mentioned it was Kennesaw State. Kennesaw State you opened up against, and then Western Carolina. So the score, I think, was misleading. So I went back and was looking at that a little bit. I did not put myself through watching the game against Western Carolina. But it doesn't – what Wake Forest did last week, I think, smacks more of taking on a very underqualified opponent. So they had all these touchdown drives, but if you look at them, Stormy, 2 plays, 73 yards, 1 play, 27 yards, so shortened field off a turnover, 2 plays, 83 yards, 2 plays, 93 yards. That, to me, is inept defense. That's not Wake Forest generating big explosives. And so I don't know if they're going to be able to do that here against NC State after what I watched in that first week as well. So all this is to say, key linebacker out for NC State. Maybe this thing gets over the total potentially, but that's kind of dipped down. I think the market got this right. If you were one of those bettors that got 6.5 and laid that and pushed this to this juiced 7 to the favorite side, I think that's it. I'd rather be on NC State here. I just don't know if I really trust Wake Forest. But big picture, as we move forward with NC State, I think you're definitely putting a pin in some of these defensive numbers because it's not good.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're seeing this total kind of move back and forth a little bit. It took a little bit of a dip to the under, but now we're seeing that over buyback again just with regard to this defense. As it pertains to the contest, I know you have been going through trying to make your 7 against the spread selections for this week. Do you feel confident about what you've got? No?
Well, last week was 1-6 in the contest, so that was great.
Last week took an L, today we bounced back.
Yes, hopefully. That will be the case. So there's a couple
some bad beats, by the way, amongst that group.
Well, as I mentioned, I think I said this on, was it Monday or Tuesday? But when you're watching SVP's bad beats and 3 of the sides that you were on are on TV, it's not really that great rewatching that. So there's a couple that I was disappointed in. USC Purdue, we spent a little bit of time on this yesterday. Thought it was a good contest side, but you're not getting 21, you're getting 20.5. That sucks. Let's see. I think we talked. Where's the Georgia line? Georgia's 3.5. I was hoping it's going to be 3, but it's 3.5. I guess not the biggest deal in the world.
I still like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say because it's moved so much that's the case. And then I was hoping because we saw. Let me double check to see if this is still the case. We saw some 2.5s appear for Clemson in the last 12 hours or so. Those have come back. So 3, I think, is a fair number there. But specifically what we're talking about, the USC number is somewhat disappointing, and the Georgia number I thought we were going to get 3 out of. But that really is where I have my most pause. So I want to take 20.5 with Purdue when I really wanted the number that I got when we were talking about betting these earlier in the week.
Yeah, I find it that half point matters. You know, when it comes to that.
Well, especially
that
at 21, right?
That's the key number. Clemson, I don't mind at the 3 at all. I feel like if they actually start to perform close to the way that we perceived this team to be, and granted, I know a lot of people thought of them as a national championship contender coming in, and they have not looked the part, but they're still a very talented team. And I think against a Georgia Tech team, even on the road, they should be able to cover that number. Have you given any consideration to the anti-Texas Tech thought process with Oregon State, considering that number? Any thought?
Yeah, I think that's definitely. I think that's the side that I'd rather go on for the game. You know, we talked about this from the Utah perspective. Obviously, Utah and Texas Tech tied at the hip this week because they will play each other next week. So if you get caught in a situation like Florida did, I don't think either will lose the game outright. But potentially being on the wrong side of looking past your opponent and getting ready for what looks like a heavyweight conference fight next week. At least staying inside of some of those numbers. Because here's the other thing. We could dub it a look ahead. It could also just be hey, second half, we have a big lead. We're just going to run some simple stuff and get out of here. Then you cover, and then people can say, see, they were looking past them. When the reality was they just weren't putting out their best stuff in the second half.
You're laying it with Miami?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, too.
So it's K-State, it's Miami. There's quite a few that I feel pretty settled on here.
Well, let's go from college football contests to Circa Million.
Houston.
Those lines are officially out as of the last hour. Talk through some of what we might want to have on our contest card. Yes, we certainly do. We'll be right back.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
On VSiN, the Sports Betting Network, Sirius XM Channel 158. Remember, as always, too, if you missed any of the show, you want to catch up, you can find Money Moves in podcast form wherever you get your podcasts. He's Jonathan Von Tobel. I'm Stormy Buonantony, and contest lines are out here at Circa, where we are broadcasting from. Week 2 contest point spreads for the Circa Million. 5 games against the spread competition each and every week. Week 1 was a little bit of a bummer, similar to our college football contest conversation. Some bad beats coming up in the NFL as well. The Ravens, most notably, I would say, on Sunday night.
Especially because I pretty aggressively, when we were talking about it, told you I want the Ravens. And I thought I was feeling great. I was like, see, I told her.
And you should have. Like, the majority of the game, you're feeling pretty good. You're up 2 scores with just a few. The other...
so 2 and 3.
Tuffy, the Steelers, although that was a back-and-forth game, decided by 2 3-point spread.
My Jets,
so that
I never
was a
doubted.
loser. That one was my decision.
I never doubted the Jets. Never cooled.
So what's interesting about going through these contest lines, though, is it gives you at least like a little bit of an indication as to where the book thinks they're going to end up come Sunday with these lines coming out on a Thursday. And while a lot of them are pretty status quo with what we've seen, not much movement, one that did stick out just as like at first glance is that you're getting the full touchdown with Panthers Cardinals. It's 6.5 across the board in the market, but a 7 in the contest.
I mean,
you want it?
We got to go back to the well one more time. You're going to give me the full 7?
I kind of think so, too.
Okay.
All right, so write that one down.
Write that down. All right.
We're still Bryce Young truthers after last week.
I don't know why I'm going to ink when I can just pull up our handy-dandy spreadsheet. That's right.
Type it in the spreadsheet.
Okay.
Commanders, Packers. I know we agreed we're not using the Thursday. We're going to wait until Saturday on these games, correct?
I would say
it is the 3.5 in the contest for those that wanted to use it. And for anyone who might not realize this, and it is important to note, if you are in this contest and you want to play the Thursday game, you have to play all 5 of your picks today prior to kickoff.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is the full 3.5, though. If you are somebody who is adamant about the Commanders getting that hook, you got it. So Patriots, Dolphins, 1.
Yeah.
Jags, Bengals, 3.5, which I think that was expected. Once that one came down, it's kind of been stuck at the 3.5. Browns, Ravens, 11.5. Giants, Cowboys is at the 5.5. So we've seen this number shift around. It's all over the place in the market. You can get anywhere between 4.5 and 5.5 out there right now. A lot of 5s.
Yeah, but it speaks to the I don't have a better term than the deadness of this number from 4.5 to 5.5. So pick your poison essentially when you're looking at the way this could land. The likelihood, of course, landing on 5 very minimal. So obviously not a massive difference in 4.5.
It's funny you say that because I was thinking when I saw, I was like, oh, there's 4.5s out there. I got a bad number because I laid 5.5. I really like the Dallas Cowboys this week. And I was like, but it doesn't really matter. Like, yes, numbers do matter, but it just statistically, when you look at the way these things land, 5.5 and 4.5 isn't a huge swing.
Yes, you always want the best of the number, but you're not going to kick yourself going from 5.5 to 4.5.
I'm going to laugh when I lose on that by a point.
Sure. Well, you should laugh when it lands on 5. I'll have to look this up. I think it was last year, actually. Was it Cowboys Giants? Where Dallas missed a kick and it landed on 5, and it would have been an 8-point game, and it laid 5.5. So I'm in that range. So I say, hey, man, it's probably not going to happen. And I think it happened in this game on a Thursday night.
Beautiful.
Last year.
Love that for me. Rams, Titans.
Odds are in your favor. It might not happen again.
Rams, Titans, 5.5, and that's what the number is across the board in the market right now. Jets, Bills, 6.5, so this has ticked down from 7. Worth noting. We didn't mention this earlier, but Ed Oliver this morning. So if you were keeping track of the Buffalo Bills injury report, Adam Schefter first tweeted it out that he was on it, and then we saw some additional reporting that apparently he showed up today in a walking boot on that left ankle and was scooting around the facility on a medical scooter. So not a great start for the Bills defense that already has a couple questionables on that.
Well, especially from a run defense standpoint, they got gouged. They got destroyed by Baltimore up front. And then now you get New York, who went out there and ran the ball and had success against the Steelers. So if one of your primary run-stopping threats along your defensive line is going to be injured, banged up, not available, that obviously doesn't bode well considering what you just did defensively the other day.
Seahawks Steelers hasn't budged from the 3. It is the 3 in the contest lines. Same with 49ers Saints with the Brock Purdy news that he is potentially going to miss now now anywhere between 2 and 5 weeks, according to Ian Rappaport, with turf toe. Also dealing with a non-throwing shoulder issue. No George Kittle. The receiving room is lacking, but sitting at that 3 still with the 49ers favored on the road because of how bad the Saints are perceived. Broncos, Colts, pick 'em.
Yep. This one, so we talked about this earlier, bet this early in the week, took 2. It looks like the market does have some agreement with me that, look, that's too strong. The gap between these two teams is not that large. And who knows, if Bo Nix is the guy that started that game at home last week against the Tennessee Titans, that does not bode well for the Broncos as a whole. And I'll just keep saying it. I think the Colts are a little underrated. We saw a little bit about that. We saw a little bit of that on Sunday, and I think we're going to continue to see it. So not surprising that the market at least has come off that 2.5, and moved in the Colts' direction here.
Anywhere from a 0.5 point to a 1.5 point spread in the Super Bowl rematch between the Eagles and Kansas City Chiefs in the contest here at Circa. Eagles favored by 1 on the road. Not
a surprise here either. I mean, the Chiefs... by the way, we should note, Xavier Worthy did practice today. He's not going to play, but it looks like he is at least not seriously injured to the point where it's going to miss a very long amount of time. This is the game. This is shocking to say. A 1-point spread between two teams that just played in the Super Bowl. I don't really know what to do with. I think that the corner issues that we saw pop up on that Thursday night against Dallas for Philly are legitimate. When we saw the second corner spot between Ja'Cory Bennett and Dory Jackson look awful. And then, God forbid, Quinyon Mitchell, who did not put forth the best effort when you look at a couple of different metrics in that game, he all of a sudden regresses from his rookie year. You can make a strong case that the Chiefs are pretty live, but their secondary looked awful as well in Brazil. The primetime Sunday night and double header on Monday night games. Falcons getting 3.5 in Minnesota, taking on the Vikings. Bucks getting 2.5 at Houston. And then the Chargers laying 3.5. So it is going over that key number of 3 in Vegas against the Raiders for that late night Monday night game. I will say, at least on 2 of those, I like the NFC South teams getting the points. Bucks? On Sunday and Monday night. You Bucks? I really like the Bucks, yeah. Hell yeah. Bucks at Texas. I think they win that game. For those who don't know, we talked about this yesterday. Starting center for the Texans, he's out for multiple weeks, so that is an issue for a team that is going to face a pretty good interior against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As we saw in the game against the Los Angeles Rams, pressure is still an issue for the Texans, and C.J. Stroud still running for his life in these games. It's almost just snap the pressure immediately for him. And that was very reminiscent of what we saw last year. So I think you're a little worried about this Houston offense being pretty poor. Now, I think the rebuttal would be still no worse in how this offense looks. Godwin, of course, is practicing, but he's not going to be available. Do you trust that this Buccaneers offense is going to be able to do anything against the Texans defense? But still, I'm with you in that of the 2 sides here, to me, it's definitely Tampa Bay. But I pulled up the actual number. Of 34 dropbacks, C.J. Stroud pressured on 14 of them. That's a 41% rate. That's not good. Yeah, I just don't think that last year was as much of a fluke as people tried to make it out to be with Houston. I don't like them very much this year. Yeah. And I agree with you that the defense is good and it'll call into some question. But I think Tampa Bay plus the points there is a good look, and I think they can win. One game I skipped over on accident that I'm disappointed in, because I wanted to take the Bears on the card +6. I was hoping maybe we could get a 6.5. They went 5.5 with that number. Lions favored at home in that spot, but clearly Circa thinks there's going to be that support for Chicago. I mean, they're also stating that in the market right now because they are the lone shop on my screen at 5.5. So there is at least something here where they're either inviting some Detroit money, whatever it is, but at least at this point, they are sitting at 5.5 themselves. So that is at least an insight as to what they're looking at liability-wise, too. It's a little bit surprising considering how, this is such a pro-Detroit building with Derek that they would need some more Detroit money. We gave the stat yesterday, actually. The Lions have covered 10 straight games coming off of a loss. They've been really good in the bounce-back spot. Big day for Ben Johnson. And so the reason that I like the Bears in this spot is I was thinking more and more about it. Not only does, I just have this feeling that he's such an intelligent play caller, right? That even if the Lions know him very well, I think that could actually be a detriment to them, that he could change up some things or make it look as if he's going to call something a certain way and then shift gears on it. I really feel like that could be advantage Bears, but it also depends on if we get first half Caleb Williams or second half Caleb Williams, what that can look like. Yeah, we should note, too, to those points, because I agree. So it sounds like we're in agreement on the Bears. We can add that to potentially the list here. Terry and Arnold did return to practice, but Taylor Decker, Jack Campbell both missed practice the other day. So whether that's rest, whatever it is, keep that in mind, as you could have starting linebacker and starting offensive tackle potentially not available if that actually is something here. So those are injuries that you have to keep an eye on. But I'm with you. Like, I don't think we should judge Caleb Williams off of a start against what could be one of the best defenses in the National Football League and a great play caller in Brian Flores. I think we should judge him on taking on a secondary which was giving up a lot of big plays downfield to the Green Bay Packers. I just rewatched that game this morning. It was not great for them at all.
Also worth noting, this past week for Chicago, the Bears were missing 3 of their best players on defense. This week, Jalen Johnson's supposed to be good to go. TJ Edwards reportedly trending in the right direction. Kyler Gordon was a late scratch on Monday, so TBD with him coming back, but getting some of those bodies that are important for the Bears defense.
Putting them on the
well.
list.
Let's do it. All right, we got to step aside. When we come back, kicking off hour 2 here on Money Moves.